This is shoe molding, and I don't like it. I don't use it. I think it's boring, kind of clumsy, and maybe even downright pedestrian. But if you go to the lumber yard or the home store and you ask for shoe molding, this is what you're going to get. It measures 1/2 inch by 3/4 inch. And with just a few router bits, you can make your own. And that's what we're going to do in this video. Here's a close look at the shoe molding, not to be confused with the quarter round. The shoe molding measures 3/4 by 1/2 inch, where quarter round is going to have the same measurement on both ends. The shoe molding measures 1/2 inch. So the first change I like to make is make my shoe molding at 3/8. I already have a roundover bit in the router. So for the first piece of molding, I'm going to use a roundover. So there's the roundover, kind of breaks the edge nicely. But what I usually like to use is the chamfer. Some people say chamfer, some people say chamfer. Kind of an inside joke there. So I'm going to go ahead, throw this bit in the router, and throw a chamfer bit on this edge. All right, I've got the chamfer bit in the router, or as Jeff from Today's Craftsman likes to call the roundover's fancy cousin. And now we'll go ahead and put a chamfer on the edge. Now to make the molding, I'll simply rip 3/8 off each side of the board, and that'll give me the molding with the profile. There's two ways to do that. You could set the fence at 3/8 inch. That can get a little, maybe a little hairy because you're pushing a thin piece of wood through that has a profile cut, which could force you to kind of push the molding into the saw, which could be dangerous. Maybe a good opportunity to use the gripper. One of the things I like to do is just set up the fence so the offcut is at 3/8. Put a pencil mark on the insert. If you don't want to draw on the zero clearance insert, you could always put a piece of tape on it. And then my offcut will always be the molding. So I'll cut this one piece off, adjust the fence. Of course, I'm going to have to bring it over a little bit and make another cut. I'm working with a piece of 1x6, so I would continue to make molding until this piece of wood became too small to work with. Here's a look at the chamfer and the roundover. Generally, this is the one that I always go with. And this is something that I've actually never done. I've used the cove bit to make molding for pieces of furniture, but never for shoe molding, but I figured, let's see what it looks like. That profile comes in a bit, so if I were to rip this at 3/8, I have a very small shoulder. So maybe for this piece of molding, I'll rip it just shy of 1/2 inch, 7/16. We can see what that looks like. Now this is a bead molding bit, and I'm pretty sure that this isn't going to work. But if you watch the channel, you know that I use bead molding a lot. So I figure, let's go ahead and throw a profile on here, make the rip, and see how it works. This time I'm making the mark so the offcut is at 7/16, and I'll do that on both sides. Now I have all the shoe moldings made, and they're really pretty nice. The bead molding is kind of a hard sell. I probably wouldn't use that for shoe molding, but I have another idea for that. Let's pretend that this is our casing and this is our baseboard. This is something that you'll often see, and I just can't stand it. And that's when people attach the shoe molding and just cut a simple 45 that either dead ends at the casing. It actually doesn't dead end because it's not dead ending into anything, or they bring it out to the casing. Either one looks terrible in my opinion. Another way to do that is you can add something called a plinth. That can be added to the bottom of your casing. That builds your casing up a little bit. And now you'll see that we'll go with the chamfer first, or chamfer. And look how nice that dead ends into the plinth. Same thing with the roundover. And I think the cove works pretty well. I think that looks pretty good. And then as far as the bead molding, I don't think this really works. I think that that's just not working for me. What is working though is, let's say that we took that 1x6 and put a chamfer on it. Geez, I gotta learn how to say the word chamfer. Chamfer. I've been getting teased about that. Okay, so here we go. We'll put the 1x6 baseboard here, and now we'll put the bead molding on top of that. I think that looks pretty good. And now we can see what the cove molding would look like. I think that's kind of nice. I'll try to get some different angles. So let's say you don't want to use a plinth, then the way around that is with a back band. So the back band goes on the back of the casing, and that builds up your casing, and then you get all those dead ends. No matter what molding you're using, you can see it all kind of works the same. Not that much more difficult. Obviously, this whole profile could be completely different. Right now, I'm just using a 1x4. This is 3/4 by 1.25 inches, but pretty easy to come up with your own simple molding designs. The one thing, in my opinion, to avoid is this lame looking shoe molding. One thing I forgot to talk about is the plinth. I made this out of a piece of 1x4 by simply ripping it down or resawing it down to 1/2 inch. And I usually make the plinths either 7.5 or 8.5 inches tall, kind of depending on what size baseboard that I'm using. Now, plinths are architecturally accurate. They go back centuries, and you can use them for all kinds of design applications. I used a plinth to repair my casings on my garage door because the casings had rotted out near the ground, and it was kind of an easy way to make that repair as opposed to trying to make something that was perfectly flush with the casing. Simple repair made with a plinth. Before I let you go, I want to tell you a few things. If you like the clothes that I wear, they're mountain khakis. You can get 30% off by using the coupon code JOHN30 at checkout. I'll have all this down in the description below. Hope that you'll check out my second channel with Jeff from Green Street Joinery, Today's Craftsman, our podcast, The American Craftsman. And if you're going to build a piece of furniture, check out my website. I've got a ton of furniture projects there. They've all got they've all got video tutorials right here on YouTube designed to help guide you through the project. I think the hardest thing about building furniture is coming up with a good design. All those designs are things that I've really thought about, and the idea is to help you make the furniture for your home. So I hope that you'll check that out. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.